and echoes in my soul. How can I keep from singing? No storm can shake my inmost calm, but to that rock I'm clinging. Since love is Lord of heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? The peace of love makes fresh my heart, a fountain ever springing. All things are mine since I am His. How can I keep from singing? No storm can shake my inmost calm, but to that rock I'm clinging. Since love is Lord of heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. We've got the light of love, we're gonna let it shine. We've got the light of love, we're gonna let it shine. We've got the light of love, we're gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. No storm can shake my inmost calm, but to that rock I'm clinging. Since love is Lord of heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for that nice song. This morning, we will be concluding the series on the Mundaka Upanishad. And to me, this is one of the nicest of the Upanishads. We've seen it doesn't have much of a story to it. We have our Upanishad, which is probably the most interesting, with Nachiketa and Yama and everything. But this particular Upanishad has some of the most beautiful verses, and it's one which Swami Vivekananda especially liked, and it's the only one that he really wrote a full translation and more or less a commentary on. So I want to just do a little quick review of what we've gone through and then finish up with some of the remaining verses. We haven't gone through verse by verse, but I've tried to pick out some of the verses that I think are the most important or most interesting of the verses. So we've seen that this Upanishad basically revolves around a simple question. There was a householder devotee who we can tell by the question was a very sincere and very intelligent person, very thoughtful householder, and he asked a very insightful question, what is that, knowing which everything is known? And the answers that we get, we have to turn to analogies to physical things, because in the spiritual realm, there are no other types of analogies. So we get the analogy of just as by knowing the nature of gold, we know the nature of everything that's made of gold, or any pots and things that are made of clay. If we know the nature of clay, then we know the real essential nature of all objects that are made of clay. So we get these analogies that are based on material things, but we know that the real answer is something else, that the ground or the source of that which is perishable and changeable will be the unchangeable absolute reality, or Brahman. So this will be that one thing. If we know Brahman, then we know everything else, because everything will be ultimately revolved back into that one reality. So the Brahman will be the ground of the universe, and it'll be transcendent, it'll be the unchanging reality, and yet that which also manifests as the universe, and which is also the self within each and every one of us. So we get all of these essential teachings of Vedanta in this one Upanishad. So we get a view of the Brahman that's full-rounded type of understanding, not simply this Nirguna Brahman that's unchanging and beyond everything, but Nirguna Saguna Brahman, Brahman which creates and projects this whole universe, enters into the universe, is the source of the universe, and yet remains unchanged and remains behind everything, and is one with the individual self. This will be the ultimate teaching of the Upanishads and of Vedanta, or Mahavakyas point to that. There's our Tattvamasi and Aham Brahmasmi. This will be something that will be that final realization that reality, that Brahman, that even that Ishvara, God that we're searching for, we find within as our very own highest self. But at the same time, we'll have this idea that like the spider will spin the web, that this ultimate reality is the source of the whole universe, and like the spider dwells within, that Brahman is present within everything, and then will withdraw back into itself. So another way of saying, Nirguna Brahman, Saguna Brahman, that one and the same reality, the teaching that Sri Ramakrishna gives over and over again, personal God and impersonal God, same reality, not two separate things. God with form, God without form, Nirguna Brahman, Saguna Brahman. So we get a very full picture of the nature of Brahman in the Upanishads. We sometimes make the mistake of concentrating too much on Brahman as pure consciousness, inactive, incapable of doing anything. The Brahman of the Upanishads is a little bit of a vibrant concept. And this whole universe comes out of this one reality, which is beyond really our conception, both personal and impersonal. So we get this, the very nature of reality in the beginning. We saw some very beautiful verses on meditation. You may remember this idea of upasanas or vidyas, that there'll be some type of symbolic meditations that we find in the Upanishads. A very beautiful one here was shooting the arrow into the target. And we try to remain tanmaya, we try to remain merged in the object of meditation, in this case through Om, picturing this bow and arrow, that the mind will get merged in the object of meditation, just like the arrow will sink deep into the target. We had the beautiful verse, which we spent a whole session on, about natatra soyobhati, that there the sun shines not, the nature of Brahman as light, as reflected consciousness, and yet not this physical light. So all of these things were covered in some of the earlier sessions, and then last week we went through the beautiful verse with the two birds on the same tree. So all of these we can see when we read this, how much Swamiji loved this Upanishad, and how so many of his teachings were based on some of the verses from this Upanishad. So the last week was that beautiful illustration of the higher self and the lower self. From one point of view, when we're identified with the lower self, the upper bird is Ishvara, is the Lord dwelling within. It's a kind of a dualistic way of looking at it. God dwelling within is the Antaryaman, as the real self. But as we progress in spiritual life, go higher and higher and higher, we realize we are that self. And as Swamiji says, the upper bird saw only a reflection of itself and thought it was that lower bird. A very nice way of putting the whole thing. Anyhow, we come to the final session, and I want to focus on a few verses which are a little bit, we can say, practical verses. That we have all of the theory and everything, but how do we go about doing this? What qualities do we have to have? What types of spiritual practices do we have to do if we want to have this realization? Because the Upanishads are not theoretical. They're meant to give us guidelines and to give us some very practical way of realizing that truth within ourselves. This is the very final, ultimate truth that if it's just theoretical, it's not helpful for us. That we ourselves are the final pramana. We're the final test. The final proof is that we can have that direct realization ourselves. We find in the third and final chapter of the Upanishad two very important verses. One of them everybody knows because it's very often repeated. Let me read these verses. These will tell us a little bit about what kind of spiritual disciplines we need to follow in order to realize the self. Satyena labhyas tapasa hyesha atma samyak jnanena brahmacharyena nityam anta sharire jyotirmayo hi shubhro yam pashyanti yataya kshena doshaha. Then the second, satyameva jayate, nanritam satyena panta vidido devayanaha yena kramanti rishaya hi aptakama yatra tat satyasya paramam nidhanam. So the self, the Atman, the self within, is to be realized through, and then we get a list. First is this unceasing practice of truth. This nitya, it means all of them are unceasing. It refers to all of them. This is our daily practice. There's no break in any of these. So this practice of truth, then austerity, then samyak jnana, correct understanding, and brahmacharya. Then it says, it is luminous and pure, and thus those yatis. Yati means anybody striving for realization, but in particular it means those who renounce everything. This Upanishad, Mundaka Upanishad, is very often interpreted to be specially meant for sannyasins, because this Mundaka is Mundana, the shaven head sannyasin. So the yati very often means, yati raja we call Swamiji, the king of ascetics, those who renounce everything. So it is luminous and pure, and thus those yatis who are pure in heart see that self within the body. Then we get our satyameva jayate, truth alone triumphs and not untruth. By truth is the path spread out leading to the devas, through which the sages, the rishis, whose desires have all been satisfied, aptakam, through which they travel. That is the highest abode or treasure house of the truth. Now, one thing that's interesting is that the first verse gives us a whole list, and the second one concentrates only on this satyam, on truth. And we see the same thing with Sri Ramakrishna, how much emphasis he puts on the truthfulness, especially he says in this Kali Yuga. So we start out with tapas. This word tapas literally means heat. Some idea that we create some type of heat within, in a figurative sense, of course, not literally, but something that can burn away all of our impurities, something that can have that power to transform things, to forge iron into steel, that type of tapas. And we read in the Upanishads also that it was Brahman practicing this type of tapas that created that type of energy that gave birth to the whole universe. So this is the term that's used, that intensity of thought became the creative force, we can say, and this is symbolically with the Brahman sitting in meditation, that gives rise to this whole universe. So there's a type of spiritual practice has to have that intensity to it. This is the main idea with the tapas, that it has to have that power to burn up these impurities and to create a type of fire within us. There's a fire of longing for realization. We very often hear tapas means meditation. We ask sometimes tapasya and tapas, what is the meaning of this? Very often they'll say, it means meditation. I asked Swami Swahananda once. He was the president, of course. We were all afraid to ask any questions or anything in front of the whole big group of all the monks that go there. I had somebody ask for me. So what is the real meaning of tapasya, of austerity? Because, as I say, we usually hear that it means, you do your spiritual practice, your meditation and everything. But he emphasized that it means a little bit of physical austerity as well. That means that do a little bit without the comforts of life. And he himself spent a number of years in Uttarkashi, where there's nobody there to cook your food. You have to go beg your food, or you can go to these almshouses and you get very poor quality watery dal and hard chapatis and things. It's not a very easy type of life. But he said that a little bit of this, of an austere and demanding life, it may be begging food, it may not, along with the practice of meditation, is necessary. A little bit of this. So for us, at least, it should be a little simplicity with regard to food and clothes and housing and everything. It sounds laughable considering the food that we get here and that the place where we live. But anyhow, we try to keep that spirit, at least, that practice a little bit of this type of simplicity, a little bit of being willing to just forbear and not always try to change things and make things better, and to accept whatever comes. There's a very nice verse from Mahabharata that gives a definition, who is a Brahmin? Now the Brahmana, if we say who is the real Brahmana, that means someone who really practices all of the qualities of being a Brahmin. Or we can say someone who lives in Brahman. There's another meaning that we have. Somebody who's willing to wear any type of clothes. They had rags on the street, it doesn't matter whatever it is. This was traditional for sadhus in the old days, that they would take whatever food came to them, and they would lie down wherever they found a place to lie down. As Swamiji says, the sky thy roof, the grass thy bed, and food what chance might bring. This was the definition for the not just for the sannyasin, but for the Brahmin. So that means for those who want to lead a life dedicated to the divine, that we have to practice a little bit, if not austerity, a little bit of simplicity and a little bit of accepting things without always trying to change things and see what we can get a little better than what is offered to us, and just this idea of acceptance. Then we get this term, samyak jnana. The jnana itself should be correct knowledge, but this is really the appropriate and correct type of knowledge. It doesn't mean it's ultimate knowledge, because this is one of the qualities that we have to have. This is a practice. This is important for us to understand what we're trying to accomplish in spiritual life and what the connection is. We sometimes do our spiritual practices and don't have a clear conception of the cause and effect. I always find it helpful, especially with meditation, to try to observe the process of meditation. How is it that we say that through meditation one can have realization? What's the connection there? We have to understand that very subtle connection between the self and the mind. And how do we see that purifying the mind will make us realize oneness with the self? These are all very important issues. In the path of devotion, what is the correct knowledge of the path of devotion? Who is this God we're worshiping? How does this God hear our prayers? If we have this understanding, Vedantic understanding, God dwells within the heart as the sakshan, as the witness, this type of samyak jnana. And then there's some conviction to this idea, God hears our prayers. Yes, God hears our prayers from within. Otherwise, how do we understand all of these things? So to have some type of clear conception, what is this relationship between this personal God and this infinite absolute reality? In what sense can the consciousness of Brahman explain our own individual consciousness? We have these concepts of the sun reflected in a container of water. All of these things are helpful. They give us some framework for our spiritual practice. They give us some conviction that there is some cause and effect, that by doing A, B will come. There has to be that connection, and if we understand it and see it clearly, it becomes very helpful because we develop conviction. Yeah. And now I know that this map that you gave me, that each step actually corresponds to a real place. Yeah. And if I follow it, that I'll get to that real place. So this is that samyak jnana. And it's essential for the path of devotion, the path of knowledge, for meditation, karma yoga, for everything. And it'll be something that will be a great aid to us throughout our spiritual life, because we don't have to question things. Why are we doing this? How will this type of spiritual practice lead to something? Even we talk about the holy company. Some people may say, well, what do I get from holy company? What's the connection there? That holy company is so great, I get God realization. And we have to have some understanding that this Shakti, there's some tangible effect of it, there's some transference, that we get to see the ideal life before us. This gives us some conviction that it's possible. All of these ideas, we can say, fall within this idea of samyak jnana, of this deeper type of understanding about spiritual life. Now we get to brahmacharya. And again, if we take this Upanishad to be specifically for the sannyasin, then this will mean a perfect continence, as we understand brahmacharya. But for everyone, this brahmacharya means living in Brahman also. That we have to take this as leading a very pure type of life, a very devoted type of life, and to keep the mind fixed on this higher reality, to not let the mind be dragged down. But this idea of purity is always there with this brahmacharya. Now we get to truth, the satya, which will be the main focus of the verse after this. And one of the reasons why we call it the most important is that it gets its own verse. The other one, we had a list of different types of practices. This gets its own verse. Truth alone triumphs. Through truth alone is the path laid out for us to reach the supreme abode and the supreme treasure of Brahman. When we read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, we find over and over and over again this emphasis on truthfulness, that he himself tells us that he was willing to offer everything at the feet of the Divine Mother except truthfulness. If he gave that up, then everything else fell apart. Then even the statement that I'm offering it to you doesn't make any sense, because he doesn't have to follow truthfulness anymore. So the truthfulness is something that Sri Ramakrishna felt was something special for this present age. Now, what does that mean, this present age? I would say that every age is a little bit like this, that we're human beings and we have our weaknesses and our frailties. And especially in this modern period when our attention span is so poor, that to sit for a long time in meditation, to do long hours of japa and other spiritual practices is very difficult. So if we can keep the truthfulness, Thakur says, for 12 straight years, we can realize the goal. He uses this 12 years for many things, one yuga. But he lays so much emphasis on this that we have to ask ourselves why. What is so special about this truthfulness? And does it simply mean not telling lies? Is that enough? That we may be withholding information, we may be giving wrong signals, everything, but we're very careful we don't tell lies. When we were kids, we would tell a lie if you crossed your fingers behind your back. Huh? You could get away with it. You were allowed to do that. Yeah. Is it the same thing? Or is there some deeper truth to this idea of truthfulness? What does it really mean? Because we can go through life without telling any falsehood, and yet we put up a false front. We try to make people think that we're greater than we really are. We're nicer people, we're kinder people, and everything. And what we're thinking within, see, it doesn't simply mean that there has to be correspondence between what we say and what we think, but it may also be that what we think within and what we don't say. Yeah. So sometimes by not saying things, we're not practicing truthfulness. Now, it doesn't mean that we have to go blurt out everything, or go up to people and say, "Oh, you look terrible today," or "Your outfit clashes," and "What's wrong? Yeah, you forgot to comb your hair." That's not truthfulness. And with regard to ourselves, we may think that, I have to go and tell everybody, this morning that I was supposed to get up early and I slept late, and I was supposed to do this, and I said, let somebody else do it. No, we don't have to go around confessing all of our sins all the time either. That's not necessarily truthfulness. But truthfulness has to be connected with truth with a capital T. And this is almost, we can say, the definition of Brahman. There's an absolute reality that there's an ultimate truth is what we're seeking. So truthfulness is our way of somehow connecting with this ultimate truth. And to be really truthful means to be truthful to ourselves. And that means to know our real nature, to act as if we really are that upper bird. When we act as if we're the lower bird, somehow we're not corresponding to truth. That we go about simply enjoying things in life and having ups and downs and everything without any idea of that higher reality within. There's something inauthentic about that type of life. So this truthfulness is not such a simple thing. It doesn't simply mean that I won't tell any lies or anything like that. It means authentic living. It is really being genuine to ourselves. There's some very nice quotes about this from Swami Vivekananda. He says, I will compare truth to a corrosive substance of infinite power. It burns its way in wherever it falls, in soft substance at once, hard granite slowly, but it must. Youth and beauty vanish, life and wealth vanish, name and fame vanish, even the mountains crumble into dust. Friendship and love vanish, truth alone abides. God of truth, be thou alone my guide, without fear, without shopkeeping, caring for neither friend nor foe. Do thou hold on to truth, and from this moment give up this world and the next and all that are to come, their enjoyments and their vanities. Truth, be thou alone my guide. Then a second quote. Stand firm like a rock. Truth always triumphs. Let the children of Sri Ramakrishna be true to themselves, and everything will be all right. So no hypocrisy. Be pure, staunch, and sincere to the very backbone. If you have marked anything in the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, it is this: they are sincere to the backbone. And they never tried to present themselves as anything greater. Really, any one of them could have been the leader of a whole religious movement. Each one was so great, they had that humility. This is also part of that truthfulness. If you have marked anything in the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, it is this: they are sincere to the backbone. Upon ages of struggle, a character is built. Be not discouraged. truth can never be lost. For ages it may be hidden under rubbish, but it will show itself sooner or later. Truth is indestructible. Virtue is indestructible. Purity is indestructible, because it's our own nature. We as much as we may falsely identify with this lower ego and everything, it can't cover up that truth, that we're already perfect, that we're already one with the divine. Then the last quote. He alone can be religious who dares say, as the mighty Buddha once said, under the bo tree, when this idea of practicality appeared before him, and he saw that it was nonsense, and yet could not find a way out. When the temptation came to him to give up his search after truth, to go back to the world and live the old life of fraud, calling things by wrong names, telling lies to oneself and to everybody, he, the giant, conquered it and said, "Death is better than a vegetating ignorant life. It is better to die on the battlefield than to live a life of defeat." Now we'll get another very, very important teaching, and again, something that Swamiji emphasized so much over and over again, especially in India. Swamiji's teachings in India were a little bit different from what we find in the West, because he wanted to arouse India. He felt that the people were sleeping, that they were in this little sleep of tamas, and he wanted to wake everybody up. Anyhow, there's another very important verse. Nayam atma balahinena labhya, nacha pramadat tapaso va apyalingat. Eter upayer yatite yastu vidwan, tasyesha atma vishite brahmadhama. The self cannot be realized by one devoid of strength, balahina, by one who is inattentive, pramada, or by one who performs austerities but has no detachment. We'll get to this alinga. But one who strives by these means, that means by strength, attentiveness, detachment, the wise one, his soul enters the abode of Brahman. So we start out with this idea, this is balahina strength, I'll get to that at the end, that's the most important one, but we have this idea of pramada. That what is a pramada? Basically, it's sloppy, inattentive, not caring to do things in the proper way. We all have a little bit of this. Some rare souls we find that everything they do is done skillfully and carefully. And when we see people like that, we're just kind of astonished. I always think of our Swami Atmajnanananda, the great artist, that he did all of the paintings that you see, almost all of them, the paintings that you see. Everything he did was artistic. I used to be just amazed to see him cook, to see him do puja. Everything was done it looked like ballet or something. And everything with great attention. It was really a great lesson for me to observe him. So this is very important in spiritual life. This is the essence of karma yoga. There's a kaushala, this yoga karma su kaushalam, to act skillfully, to act with concentration, to act with attention, to always consider what are the results, what are the ramifications of everything that we do. Every time we slam a door, how many people will be disturbed? Every time we clump our feet, how many people will hear it? Little things that most of us don't bother about too much, but it's a very great habit to form, because when we sit for meditation, we find that this mind has changed. This mind becomes very like a trap, strong, that it'll catch things easily. So everything we do in life has a transfer in our meditation. If we're sloppy with everything else, we'll be sloppy with our meditation. So this pramada, this is something very important. Then we get this tapasaha alingat. Linga means a sign. And generally this is taken to mean this that someone has to formally take to this, wear this garuva cloth or carry a staff, something to have some indication. And again, this Upanishad is, if we take it for sannyasin, then it makes a little bit of sense. But we know that just putting on this Garba cloth doesn't mean anything. That there's a beautiful song, I don't remember how it actually goes, that in the third volume of Go Forward, Swami Paramishanandaji, he says to the sadhu, oh fool, you sadhu, you've dyed only the outer cloth, but not the inside of the heart. Yeah. So that's the real thing, that these external signs don't mean anything. There's a very important verse in Gita, the first verse of chapter 6. Who is the real sannyasin? Not somebody who just has all the external trappings, but someone who can perform all action without any attachment to the fruits. That's the real sannyasin. So we put a little emphasis on the formal taking of sannyasa because it means that we've made a lifelong commitment. There's something important about having that type of commitment that requires a little stamp to it. So we can say that this really means that one must be committed to leading a life of sincerity and devotion and striving for realization and simplicity and renunciation. So this will be the meaning of that we have to act without selfishness and to do everything without a personal motive. This selfishness and ego, these are the things that we really have to renounce. Sri Ramakrishna always says that internal renunciation is the most important type of renunciation. Now I want to get to this idea of strength. This verse says, those who are devoid of strength, balahinena, if someone is devoid of strength, then they won't be able to have that highest type of realization. And when Swamiji comments on this one verse, he only talks about this part of it. So for him, he was a real prophet of strength, we can say that. And he emphasized this teaching so much. In all aspects, physical strength, mental strength, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual. In every possible way, Swamiji wanted us to be strong. Now, we'll start with physical strength, because there's always a consideration in spiritual life. Physical strength and good health, just to be healthy and strong and be able to do our spiritual practice. For Swamiji, this of course was a great blessing. He himself suffered from so many ailments in his lifetime. He couldn't get good sleep at night. There were some times when his asthma was so bad he could hardly breathe. He had to press a pillow to his chest and everything. So he knew what it was like to suffer from bad health, and wanted the monks also to take care of their health, to do some physical exercise. And so he put great emphasis on this idea of being physically strong also. Otherwise, we won't be able to sit for long hours in meditation, this ache and that ache and everything. Most of us know about these things. And if we don't get good sleep at night, we'll be tired, we'll fall asleep. So this is something that Swamiji did emphasize. And even in the path of devotion, that the physical health can break down if we're not physically strong also with these divine types of emotions. So Swamiji said in one place, physical strength, therefore, is absolutely necessary. It is the strong body alone that can bear the shock of reaction resulting from the attempt to control the organs. So we must be strong and healthy. When they're miserably weak, attempt any of the yogas, they are likely to get some incurable malady, or they weaken their minds. Voluntarily weakening the body is really no prescription for spiritual enlightenment. Now, we have examples, of course, of saints who have done that, practiced that type of tapasya. This is also legitimate, but this is not what Swamiji is talking about. We have to remember that, especially I say in India, Swamiji wanted people to be strong because he wanted them to work also, to work for the welfare, lift up the country and everything, not to just think about their own individual spiritual growth. Now, I would say that a little distinction can be made, and we'll find that there's another side to this story, but a distinction between the different paths. And with regard to Raja Yoga, then this physical health is absolutely essential. That we have to have strong bodies, we have to be able to, that's why we even this little bit of Hatha Yoga is necessary, is asana, in order to be able to sit firm and strong without moving. And so for Raja Yoga, this is very important. Karma Yoga is very important if we want to be workers, if we want to be able to go out and do Thakur's work and help people, then we don't want to have to worry about our own physical health all of the time. Now, what about the Jnani and what about the Bhakta? Here we have a little bit of a different type of story. The Jnani may or may not care about the physical body. Jnani's whole point is, I'm not this body. So we will find those that pay no attention to the body. It's risky and it's dangerous, and we don't recommend it, but there'll be some like that. Our Swami Vijnanananda up until the very end of his life, they convinced him to try a little homeopathic medicine. Otherwise, he wouldn't take medicine at all. Some of the others were like that also. There's this, what is the medicine? Ganga water is my medicine. The Hari is my doctor, and that's enough for me. So they would practice that type of thing, and any ailment would come, they would say, why should the mind be affected by what happens to the body? So there'll be two things. One is, I'm not this body. Second thing is, I won't allow the mind to be affected by poor physical health. So Jnani can get away with this a little bit. But Swamiji is saying for everybody, good health, of course, is a blessing. Now, what about the Bhakta? They also can take a different type of attitude. That, Mother, whatever condition you place me in, I'll be happy. This is all your grace. No, you want to give me some physical ailments, you want to give me some challenges in life, that I take all of this as your grace. This is one attitude to take. And actually, if we look at this from the point of view of titiksha, that whatever you give me, I can handle, and I can handle it happily, and it won't affect me at all. This is the strongest type of attitude. So, best thing is to combine both. Do whatever we have to try to be healthy. Don't go overboard. And then whatever suffering comes that's unavoidable, then we try to just say either let this pain remain with the body and I'll be in bliss, I'll be free and everything, or Mother, you've given me this for a purpose. This will be some blessing for me that I don't understand now. We take it that way. So this is that kind of two sides to this question. So it's really a balancing act. Do we rush to the doctor every time we're a little bit injured, or how much of the mind do we want to give to the body? And at the same time, if we don't give a little bit, then we may suffer later. Yeah, there are some people like me that pretend to follow the jnana and bhakti. Really, I'm lazy and I don't like to do exercise. So we have to observe the mind also and see if it's just laziness or not. But to keep healthy, of course, good health is a blessing. We all know that. Now, mental strength is actually the most important thing. That this will help overcome all other types of physical problems that we have. This mental strength will help with even emotional problems. There's nobody who won't have to suffer some type of bereavement or some difficulties in life, loss of job, all sorts of different things. And if we have that strength of mind to overcome these things, then that's also a great blessing. Swamiji says, this is the one question I put to everyone, every man, woman, or child, when they are in physical, mental, or spiritual training. Are you strong? Do you feel strength? For I know that it is truth alone that gives strength. I know that truth alone gives life, and nothing but going toward reality will make us strong, and none will reach truth until he is strong. Every system, therefore, which weakens the mind makes one superstitious, makes one mope, makes one desire all sorts of wild possibilities, mysteries, and superstitions I do not like, because its effect is dangerous. Such systems never bring any good. Such things create morbidity in the mind, make it weak, so weak that in course of time it will be almost impossible to receive truth or live up to it. Strength, therefore, is the one thing needful. Now, the real source of strength is spiritual strength. And we've seen earlier that Swamiji's conception of the self is that the self is not just this pure consciousness and witness and all of that. Somehow the source of fearlessness, the source of great strength within, if we feel united with that infinite absolute self that can't be shaken by anything, never born, never dies, we become fearless. So he emphasized this. This is that type of, we can say, spiritual strength. And nothing has the power to give us that other than knowing who we really are. Of course, we can say that those who feel that divine presence within, that God is holding our hand, they'll also have a certain type of strength. But this is this Upanishadic type of strength that Swamiji wanted. He says, men are taught from childhood that they are weak and sinners. Teach them that they are all glorious children of immortality, even those who are the weakest in manifestation. Let positive, strong, helpful thought enter into their brains from very childhood. Lay yourself open to these thoughts, and not to weakening and paralyzing ones. Say to your own minds, I am he, I am he. Let it ring day and night in your minds like a song, and at the point of death declare, I am he. That is the truth. The infinite strength of the world is yours. Now we're getting to the very end of the Upanishad. At the end, we get some very nice verses which describe how the realized soul will enter into Brahman. But I want to end this little presentation by going back to an earlier verse, which is a kind of description of the God-realized soul. Because to me, this is so helpful, just as the Stita Prajna section is so helpful in Gita, to see what is the living example. What is the God-realized soul like? Some dry person who sits in a corner all the time, or somebody singing and dancing. What is that type of person like? So we get a very nice verse here. Prano hyesha ya sarva bhutair vibhati vijanan vidwan bhavate nativadi atma krida atma rati kriyavan esha brahma vidam varishtha. That Brahman is the source of life, shining diversely through all beings. Knowing that, so this is the God-realized soul, knowing that supreme reality, the wise do not speak much. They sport in the self alone and delight in the self alone. The Atma Krida, Atma Rati, we have this Atma Rama, this idea in Gita. This shows that there's some tremendous joy that comes from all of this. That life becomes like this wonderful play and sport and game. They get tremendous joy out of this. It says, they are the greatest among the knowers of Brahman. So this verse starts out by identifying Brahman with life, prana, with life. So we see everything pulsating with life. This is also the manifestation of Brahman. As I say, it's a very almost earthy type of conception of reality, not simply this transcendent kind of flighty type of pure consciousness, but there's an earthy reality. It's also one aspect of Brahman. And when we realize that, what is the result? No, Ativadi, we don't say much, maybe dumbfounded even. Huh? Obak, we find this term so much in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Everybody is speechless with wonder seeing Sri Ramakrishna. He says when they filling the jug, then it makes this gurgling sound. When it's full, then all sound stops. So this is this one of the descriptions, this adivadi, that will find that these great souls, they feel no need to talk all of the time. Sometimes I wonder how people find so much to talk about. That what is the point of it and everything? That they're so content within that the desire to speak isn't there. They'll speak, of course, but they enjoy that silence because then they commune with the self within. But as I say, the real beauty of this verse is this Atma Krida, Atma Rati, that the God-realized soul sports in the self alone. That we think, what is the self? It's just consciousness. No, that there's this blissful aspect is there. Delights in the self alone, finds all joy and satisfaction in the self alone. We find so many verses in the Gita like this also. So it's not a dry experience, it's a blissful type of experience. We're not trying to get to that state where we simply lose all consciousness and we become merged and everything. No. That may be that final nirvikalpa samadhi, but otherwise, those who have any type of spiritual experience, they almost can't contain the joy within. And one of the greatest examples of this, for me, goes back to an image that we get from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. And I want to finish with that. When M sees Sri Ramakrishna in that Atmarama state. This was the third visit that M made to Dakshineshwar, and he had left Sri Ramakrishna a late afternoon, and I guess it was getting dark and everything, and then Sri Ramakrishna had said to him, he had asked Sri Ramakrishna before, will there be any more singing? And Sri Ramakrishna said, no, I don't think any more singing today. Everybody else had left. And then he said, but I'm going to a devotee's home tonight, this is the Balaram Bose, that if you go there, you'll hear more singing. So M says, okay. So then he goes, he's walking out, and then somehow he turns around and goes back to Sri Ramakrishna. And he says to him, I don't know this person, I'm a stranger, is it proper for me to go? He wants to, find out and everything. But before that, he sees Sri Ramakrishna, and I want to read this description. He, M, had gone as far as the main gate of the temple garden when he suddenly remembered something and came back to Sri Ramakrishna, who was still in the Nat Mandir. This is that structure right in front of the Kali temple, where they would have performances and things there. Who was still in the Nat Mandir. In the dim light, the master, Sri Ramakrishna, all alone, was pacing the hall, rejoicing in the self, as the lion lives and roams alone in the forest. So we can just see, almost incapable of sitting still, the joy is so great that he had to pace back and forth in that state, just like we picture what is it about the lion? No one to fear. Can joyfully roam in the forest, everybody else has to worry. Well, the lion doesn't have to worry about anything else. So in the dim light, the master, all alone, was pacing the hall, rejoicing in the self, as the lion lives and roams alone in the forest. So this is a beautiful picture we can form in our minds of Sri Ramakrishna in that Atmarama state. And this is the goal of this Mundaka Upanishad, all of the Upanishad, and spiritual life, for us to be able to attain that state. So let us take a few minutes and sit quietly. Sarve bhavantu sukhina, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukhabhag bhavet. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. May all beings be happy, may all be free from disease, may all realize the highest good, may none suffer from misery. Om peace, peace, peace be unto all. Next Sunday, Swami Swahananda ji will speak on the subject from the unreal to the real. And I just want to remind everybody, there was a mistake in the message that we sent out about Swami Balabhadrananda's visit. It's the 26th, but it's a Wednesday. I think I put Tuesday, the 26th, if anybody noticed. Huh? Did you notice? Yeah. So try to keep that date open. He is a very, very sweet-natured Swami. I know him from my very early trips to India. And this is the first time that he's coming. He's the now senior-most Assistant General Secretary, and a very good speaker and good singer also. So we'll see, maybe he can sing something for us also. So there'll be satsang with him when he comes there. So thank you all for coming, and please join us now in the basement for some refreshments.